Hi, good afternoon or good morning or good evening wherever you are in the world, and it's a real great pleasure to contribute to this program on repurposing that I think is a really important public health issue. So my name is Dan O'Connor and I work at the UK Medicines Regulator, and I'm going to talk today around some regulatory views and particularly a new initiative that we launched in the beginning of the year called the ILAP, which is the Innovative Licensing and Access Pathway. So just a little bit of background into what the MHRA is and what our role is. So that's our building on the right. We're based in Canary Wharf, which is in central London in the UK. And the MHRA is responsible for regulating both medicines and devices. And as many of you will know, that actually medicines authorities, not just in the UK, but in Europe and across the globe, have responsibilities for regulating the activities of the pharmaceutical industry for medicines. And there are a number of different approvals right from the very beginning. So if you think about clinical trials, often these require regulatory oversight, but also as that product develops and moves through the life cycle approach to the first authorization to new indications. And as you can see at the bottom of the slide, I've listed a number of regulatory activities that the MHRA is involved with. And there'll be a couple here that I pick out in terms of thinking about repurposing and how the regulator can facilitate programs for repurposing. One is scientific advice, which is a really important interaction between the sponsor and the regulator. And the other is the route to marketing authorization, so that formal process for licensing new drugs or new indications. So a little bit of background to repurposing. So there is no formal regulatory definition of repurposing, but it can be described as the process of identifying a new use for an existing drug in an indication outside the scope of the original indication, as determined by the product label or the summary of product characteristics. In the broadest terms, repurposing can cover a number of different activities, such as new therapeutic uses, but also using a drug in a new way by perhaps changing the formulation. So the route of administration may change, which may mean that that's more accessible to a particular type of condition or patient population. Maybe it's combinations of new drugs, so perhaps drugs, that have already existed, but then combined in a new way, or creating new drug device combinations, which is a particularly innovative part of research. Identifying repurposing opportunities come from a number of different ways, including sort of clinical observations, but increasingly we're seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning to really delve into the data that exists to try to find new opportunities. And really we should see drug repurposing as absolutely a dynamic field of drug discovery and development that can offer real benefits to patients, with the potential for a much faster development program, because you already know a lot about the drug, particularly from a safety perspective, but the opportunity to drive efficiencies in that development program and potentially reduce costs. So I mentioned scientific advice at the beginning, and scientific advice can be requested through the MHRA, but also through other regulators. In the case of the MHRA, the UK regulatory authority, this is not a legally binding activity, but companies are strongly recommended to engage with scientific advice through the regulator. And the scope of questions can be really broad. They can cover some of the pharmaceutical development aspects. Maybe there's a need for the repurposed medicine, particularly for a different route of administration, to consider enhanced non-clinical package of work. And then particularly the clinical aspects, how to design that clinical trial. What are the really important features from a regulatory perspective around the endpoints and the methodology to really ensure that that clinical trial is developed in a way that is regulatory supportive for a future application. And in the UK, the final advice is given in a formal letter following a meeting with the company. So we have some experience of sponsors that are working in the repurposing field and the importance of scientific advice. And just draw you to attention to, I think, a really nice paper that's in Nature Reviews Clinical Oncology with the title "Scientific Advice, Is Drug Repurposing Missing a Trick?" And this was a paper that was written by colleagues from the Anti-Cancer Fund. really trying to highlight the importance of scientific advice from their perspective, and noting that there is a direct correlation between following the scientific advice from regulators and positive outcomes at the time of drug licensing. And we ran a particular case study with the British Generic Manufacturers Association and two different patient groups. One was around the Anti-Cancer Fund, and this particular case was covering propranolol, which is a beta blocker in angiosarcoma. And this slide just highlights some of the take-home messages that are in the paper, that the process of scientific advice for the pharmaceutical industry is often absolutely standard practice. It's something that pharmaceutical industry colleagues often do. But it's not necessarily so common for those in the academic and not-for-profit sector. And here's a few quotes from the paper that said, for those of us who had not previously participated in a scientific advice meeting, the experience proved to extremely useful. The meeting and the discussion with the MHRA team was extremely enlightening in that it provided focused feedback on the levels of evidence required. And the feedback provided was very specific with regards to the types of additional preclinical work that was required alongside points to aid the development of the clinical package. So after highlighting the importance of that engagement between the regulator and the sponsor involved with repurposing, I'll move on to hopefully what is the outcome of any data that is gained through the clinical research, which is the eventual labeling of that data through drug licensing. And what are the benefits of drug licensing? But clearly, you can use medicines, at least in the UK, off-label, but there are benefits to ensure that clinical data is formally reviewed by the medicines regulator to make sure that that data is consistent with the standards of quality, safety, and efficacy. A drug license is only issued if a positive benefit-risk ratio is determined. Licensing also reduces burdens on clinicians if currently there's only prescribing off-label, and it provides an independent source of information for both the healthcare professional but also the patient in terms of the patient information. And there is an additional value to drug licensing and ensuring that repurposed indications are included on the label, and that's the assurance that the indication is subject to pharmacovigilance and a risk management plan. And particularly for repurposed medicines where there is already established medicine, there is usually a much quicker approach and a simpler process to gaining that drug license, the marketing authorization, called a type 2 variation. And this can really be quite an exciting process to be able to get this label there so that all of the patients can then truly benefit from that medicine. So now I'll just move on to a new initiative that we released in January, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the ILAP, the Innovative Licensing and Access Pathway. And this pathway, though it's not solely dedicated to repurposing, has really called out repurposing to try to make this regulatory framework as visible as possible to those that are developing medicines in the repurposing space. So ILAP stands for Innovative Licensing and Access Pathway, and it was launched following the UK's exit from the EU, with an ambition to ensure that medicines are developed in a way that they can be delivered safely, early, and financially sustainable. A real key component to the ILAP is the partnership between the MHRA and the UK HTA bodies. These are NICE, SMC, and the AWTTC, and you can see their full names and logos below at the bottom of the slide. But it's not only this collaboration between these different HTA bodies and the medicines regulator, but also closer engagement with other colleagues, such as in the NHS systems within the UK. This slide just highlights some of the quotes in terms of the ambition of the ILAP when it launched, and you can see that the key theme from the ambition of launch was really transforming the way medicines reach patients, really trying to build a much more frictionless pathway to access to cost-effective medicines. What are the key components to the ILAP? There's a new innovation passport. This is a new medicines designation. And this medicines designation links to a portfolio of activities around something called a target development profile. In a similar way to industry's target product profile, what the TDP does is to try to create a unique roadmap utilizing tools of the toolkit to provide a platform for much more sustainable, enhanced interactions, multi-stakeholder collaboration. There are tools from a toolkit to ensure that we drive efficiencies in the development program, which will support more alignment in terms of the data generation. The attempts will be to try to bring this together in a much more cohesive, integrated pathway, including patient experts and all of the colleagues that are involved in the partnership. So where does repurposing come in? So firstly, this is a slide that covers the innovation passport designation. It's open from the non-clinical phase of development, so before the first in-human studies. And you can see that it's open for both commercial but also non-commercial applicants. And that's really important because we know a lot of repurposing activities are conducted through not-for-profit organizations and the academic community. The principles of innovation really include broad and inclusive definition. And that's in order to capture a wide range of products. And we particularly call out in a drug repurposing to ensure that it is really visible that the pathway is open to innovative products such as traditionally thought of innovative products such as the advanced therapy medicinal products, but also includes drug repurposing, so that repositioning of those older drugs. And what the innovation passport does right from the very beginning is that it encourages this much more structured approach to the discussions between the MHRA, the HTA bodies, the health technology appraisal bodies, the drug developer. But interestingly, this designation is a joint decision maker. So it's not just a sole medicines regulator. Actually, it includes a shared decision-making process between all of the partners, but also includes patient input. So patients are involved also at the table in terms of the discussion of whether an innovation passport should be included. So these just highlight the three criteria in the following slides. The first criteria is that there has to be details of a condition or a public health area. So maybe that's a life-threatening or seriously debilitating condition or a significant public need. The second criteria is the medicine fulfills one or more of the following areas. And you can see here in the second bullet that highlights the repurposing approach to the ILAP. And this is that a medicine is being developed in a clinically significant application. The final criteria is that the medicine has the potential to offer benefits to patients. And here we strongly encourage the sponsor or the company to include the views from patients or patient groups around what might be the benefits to the medicine in a development program and eventually to a licensed product. TDP, the target development profile, is the portfolio of activities that's linked to a designation. Really, the idea here is to create a roadmap of activities to ensure that the product is as both regulatory and access ready as it can be, as it moves through the development pathway from non-clinical data through to clinical trials, through to the regulatory decision making. It allows a much more overview of the broad range of issues that may impact the development of products, really trying to enhance that development program and ensuring that where possible, novel and innovative approaches to the route to market can be applied. In terms of the TDP, you can see here in this quite busy slide all of the different sections that are covered in terms of the consideration of the target development profile, information and discussions around the product development, the future development and evidence generation, what might be the specific challenges and novel aspects, scientific advice, as scientific advice being sought, what scientific advice might be important in the future. Important section on patient engagement and the use of patient-reported outcomes. And then the final sections relate to special populations and product life cycle. And even for those newer products, there is again an aspect to the ILAP that frames the repurposing discussion. That is one of the questions and sections in the TDP is to ask sponsors whether there's a possibility to repurpose the medicine. So does the sponsor already know that there might be a successive indication or a future indication based on the mechanism of action that might have important public health benefits later down the line of the life cycle? This slide shows some of the tools that have been developed in the toolkit, and as you can see, they spread across a variety of different areas, right from very early. So there's a tool on rapid clinical trial dossier pre-assessment, so supporting the clinical trial, all the way through to new licensing procedures such as accelerated timetables for marketing authorization, including international options that the UK joined at the beginning of January, such as the FDA's Erables program and the Access Collaborative. So what has the activity to date been in the ILAP? So far we've had 65 innovation passport applications since launch. These have been from a variety of size companies, both large and small, from a spin-out from a top UK university. A number of these products have been ones that have been positioned to the FDA Orbis for oncology. And there's a really good mix of both rare and common diseases. And in fact, our first innovation passport designation, as you can see in the right-hand panel of the slide, was issued for a rare disease. Currently, we haven't had any repurposing products come through to positive opinion for the repurposing aspects, but we have had discussions with a number of patient groups who are very keen to bring their products to the ILAP and see the ILAP as a really supportive framework in terms of bringing their products through to discussion with the regulator and the HDBody partners. So in summary, the innovative licensing and access pathway provides an ambitious route to medicines approval, which includes repurposed medicines. We believe that innovative products that are including repurposed medicines require innovative approaches. And the key components to the ILAP are this better system alignment between the medicines regulator, the MHRA, NICE and the SMC and the All Wales Consortium, and engagement with companies. Enhanced patient engagement is really important, and patients are being embedded throughout the process of the ILAP, including at the decision point of when to issue an innovation passport. And the use of innovative methods and tools is encouraged to ensure that we accelerate the availability of robust data. This is all pulled together through this target development profile, this UK-specific roadmap, which is tailored to the needs of each innovative product, really hoping that we will see earlier decision-making in the drug development paradigm. Just a summary slide for repurposing from a regulatory perspective. We consider repurposing to be a dynamic and innovative field of drug development with the potential for major public health benefits. Repurposing is becoming an increasing hot topic for both regulators, but also for regulatory science. And there's a link there to a paper that we published a year or so ago, highlighting some of the really important aspects of repurposing to regulators. There are a number of regulatory incentives to support repurposing, and ongoing regulatory initiatives at both the European level and the UK level, looking more closely at how to support those that are developing drugs in the repurposing field. Seeking scientific advice, I think, hopefully, as I've shown at the beginning of the presentation, is a really key aspect in terms of interactions with the regulatory authorities, particularly if the intention is to ultimately seek a license for on-label prescribing. And as an example of regulatory flexibilities, the new UK Innovative Licensing and Access Pathway is open to repurposing projects, and we think provides a really visible route to regulatory and access readiness for those that are developing products with repurposed medicines. There's another program that we're also involved with, which was launched in March, and I just will be my final slide. It is an NHS England repurposing program with the MHRA, NICE, and the National Institute for Health Research. And here, this repurposing program, and you can see in the right side panel, opportunities repurposed medicines in the NHS in England, is a program and a framework to establish, to identify and pursue opportunities to strengthen the evidence base, license, supply, cost effectiveness, equitable adoption of currently unlicensed or off-label medicines. This is a really exciting development that runs in parallel with the ILAP that we really hope to see some brilliant results through. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I can be contacted. Thanks very much.